So our body has three basic salivary glands. You don't need to remember their names. It's just for your information that you have three salivary glands: parotid, submandibular gland, and sublingual gland. So these are the three salivary glands that are present near your mouth, right? So these are present outside the buccal cavity, but what they release is saliva, right? Now, what is the importance of this saliva? Let's understand by doing a very simple activity. It's very interesting, and I'm pretty sure all of you would love to do it.
To test the action of saliva on starch. Requirements: test tubes, 1% starch solution, saliva, dropper, iodine solution. Method: take 2 ml of starch solution in 2 test tubes marked A and B. Add 1 ml of saliva to test tube A only. Leave both the test tubes undisturbed for about 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, now add a few drops of iodine solution to both the test tubes. Observe the change in color. Observation: you find that in test tube B, a blue-black color develops, while in test tube A, no such color develops. Conclusion: the saliva break down the starch into simpler form in test tube A. So the iodine in test tube B with starch gave a blue-black color, but not in test tube A.
So, what is the function of saliva? Saliva converts complex starch into simple sugar, right? And as we know, sugar, when we add iodine, it will not give us any color. So in this way, we see that the saliva, the very first digestion begins in your mouth, right? So we were seeing that how your buccal cavity was playing a role in digestion. So we saw that saliva started the digestion in the mouth itself. Now students, before we move on, let's understand one more thing. We talked about the teeth, we talked about the saliva. So when we are talking about teeth, you must have observed that many a times some of the people will suffer from tooth decay. So what exactly is tooth decay? Let's understand that. Right students, so in this way we saw the importance of buccal cavity and saliva in the digestion process. Now let's move on to the other part of the buccal cavity, that is tongue. Now tongue, student, is a muscular fleshy organ. It's a muscular fleshy organ. When I say muscular, it means that it doesn't have a bone, right? This is the whole tongue is your what? It is complete muscles and it is fleshy, right? So when you're talking about the tongue, you must have observed that the front part of your tongue is free, and that's the reason why you're able to move it around your mouth easily. You are able to talk, whereas there is only a limit to as to how much you can take your tongue out. Try and doing that, and you will see that there is a strain at the back of your mouth, right? So this tongue is actually attached at the back of the buccal cavity. So it has two ends. One end is attached and the other end is free, right? So this is muscular fleshy organ that is attached to the back, to the floor of buccal cavity, right? And the front end is free. So this part over here is attached and this is the free part, right? So in this way we see that this is the structure of your tongue. Now when we talk about the function, so what is the function of the tongue? First of all, we use it for talking, right? So when we are talking, we observe, and you must have observed that there is the movement of your tongue which allows you to form words, right? It helps you to form word and talk. This is one of the functions. Another very important function of tongue is mixing of saliva with food. Now, whenever you are eating the food, there are two things which are going on simultaneously. These two parts, that is your tongue and your teeth, are doing two things. Your teeth is chewing and grinding the food into smaller pieces. The salivary gland is releasing saliva in your mouth continuously, and the tongue is mixing that food in with your saliva, right? So while you are eating, that is the reason why one of the reasons why, while if you're talking while eating, what will happen, sometimes you might cut your tongue. The reason is that when you are talking and when you are eating simultaneously, what is happening is that you're moving your tongue for two things, right? For mixing the food as well as for talking. So this causes problem in the mixing process, and sometimes you cut your tongue while eating and talking. That is why this is one of the reasons why it is suggested that you should not talk while eating, right? Another reason we are going to discuss in the next session. And please remember that why we are suggesting that you should not eat while talking. There are two reasons, right? So one of the reasons is that you might hurt your tongue because your tongue is doing two things at the same time, which is not advisable, right? So first thing is we use it for talking, and the other function is mixing of saliva with the food, right? This mixing of the saliva, also it helps in swallowing the food. So once the food you have chewed into smaller pieces, it has mixed with the saliva. Now the tongue will help in the swallowing of the food from your buccal cavity, right? So these are the three major functions. So this is the third function. The fourth function is to detect taste. This is another very important function of the tongue. We've seen that your tongue has special taste buds. These are the taste buds which are present in the different areas of your tongue, which detect different kinds of taste. Usually when we are eating anything, there are four tastes. One is bitter, we have salt, sweet and sour. These are the four tastes that we usually eat. To see that where all we find, there are different areas, there are different regions of the tongue which detect different your tastes. To understand this in a better way, let's do this activity. It's a very fun activity and you'll enjoy doing it. The very first step is to prepare sugar solution, prepare common salt solution, lemon juice and juice of crushed leaf or bitter gourd. In Hindi we call it karela. Now what you're going to do is, you can do this activity in the groups of 2 to 3 to 4 students, and what you're going to do is blindfold one of your friends and using a clean toothpick take a small amount of sugar solution and take a clean toothpick and take a small amount of sugar solution and put it in these areas as indicated in the image. What you're going to do, you're going to ask your friend to remember at which part of the tongue he or she was able to feel the sweetness, whether it was on the tip of the tongue, whether on this side or this side. Using this diagram, you're going to do this activity take all of these one by one, because each of the solution describes or represents sweet, salty, sour and bitter. These were the four tastes that we are talking about. So keep all of these one by one onto the tongue in these regions, and then ask your friend that which part was able to detect the taste nicely, perfectly, right? So this will help you in remembering that what part of your tongue is able to remember, or what part of your tongue is able to detect which kind of taste. So based on these activities, you will observe that usually the bitter taste is felt most at the back side of your mouth, of your tongue, whereas the salt is tasted on this area, right? Sourness is on the sides like this, and sweet is on the tip of the tongue. So these are the areas where you will find that your friend will also be able to detect these tastes better, right? So this is all about the tongue, that and what are the different functions of the tongue. Now, once we've talked about all of these three important parts, that is the salivary gland, your tongue and teeth. So in this way, students, we talked about the buccal cavity. We saw the different parts of the buccal cavity and their importance in the process of digestion. Also, we talked about the different types of incisions.